Welcome to The Art of Growth, where we use the Enneagram and the best tools we can find to help organizations and individuals navigate transformation well. Today, we're going to be talking about bypassing and distraction and using other things as a proxy for our own growth and what can happen when we do that. And we're also going to even tell some funny stories about something we recently worked through as a team. And we laugh through it because sometimes that's the best thing to do. It is better to approach our transformation with humor and being willing to not take ourselves too seriously as we take our work seriously. And it's much better to do that with humor than shame. As we often tell coaching clients, shame is not going to get you there. Shame gives the illusion of moral advancement without any of its benefits. And we want to do real transformational work, which means staying focused and moving forward. But before we get into that, a couple announcements. One, if you have not taken our free online Enneagram test, there's a reason we made it. So many of the tests that are out there do not give very accurate results. And so we wanted to give you something that would be a lot more accurate, that is taken from the language we have used in coaching and having panels where we use language that the type uses to describe itself, and we designed our test around that. So it is completely different than any Enneagram test that is out there. So if you haven't taken it yet, please take ours and give us any feedback you have. We're still in the beta version, so if something goes wrong, please let us know. We are getting close on that front though. If you've been thinking about group coaching and haven't jumped in yet, there's a couple spots left for the 3-month program starting in July. Please contact me, Jim, at theartofgrowth.org to set up a discovery call, 15 minutes where we get to know you to see if it's a good program for you. If you're interested in individual coaching, you can contact Joel at theartofgrowth.org. And if you'd like to bring us into your organization, we are doing some coaching, consulting, training for organizations right now, setting up our next calendar year. Contact Suzanne at theartofgrowth.org. But the hub of all this, you can get a hold of that and other things that we are currently doing, all at our hub, theartofgrowth.org. But without further ado, let us get into this week's episode. Welcome to The Art of Growth. I'm Jim Zartman.
Suzanne York.
And Joel Hubbard. Jim, you posted something recently that got quite a few looks at and quite a few comments. People seem to be responding quite a bit to it. And it was about this whole issue of distractions that's happening currently in our country. And obviously we have some big ones. So I'm curious as to what was it that sparked that desire in you and sort of some of the thoughts around that.
Yeah. It feels weird to call some of them distractions because, they're things that are actually really important. And sometimes we let something really important take over because it's immediate. But it can still be a distraction if it's not what we're supposed to be focused on, if it's not where our attention is supposed to be going. So what had sparked it is I saw just social media getting so loud and everyone wanting you to take up their agenda, whatever the agenda is the day, the hot topic, everyone needs to be about it. Everyone's Facebook feeds, and it's because that's really how we're dealing with the situation is by posting on social media, not often active engagement. And I like Rob Bell's quote about if it happened on the internet, it didn't happen, because that's not really where the real stuff happens. So social media getting loud, and I just started feeling this. I mean, it's an assumption I need to test, and I'd love to dialogue about it. But what it just felt like is people don't have a clear sense of self and a clear sense of mission. And so they just pick up the bullhorn that someone had handed them. It's so easy to just get sucked up into whatever the black hole of the day is. And when people don't have a clear sense of self, a clear sense of mission, a clear sense of their calling, it's very easy to get pulled in. And we often refer to that as like spiritual bypassing, where you use some kind of a proxy to serve for the work you actually need to do. And for some people, they absolutely should be involved with a lot of the things that are happening right now. But if you don't have a clear sense of self and a clear sense of mission, you haven't done your internal work, the person that you send out into those missions is not going to be very helpful. They're probably going to create more of the destruction than they are the solution. And when people don't have that clear sense and they have not done that work, they don't go out and become activists. They become crusaders. They are trying to colonize the world with their belief systems and their values. And it's very hostile. One of the things that's happening is this cancel culture that's happening so much, where it's just like we have to growth isn't possible. Anyone who's ever messed up anywhere in the past that we can find on the internet, all of a sudden, that we invalidate even good work they've done, whatever it is. But it's just the noise of this, the distraction of this. And it just made me go, okay, I want to come back to what I think integrity is, which is staying true to my call, to my mission, to what I feel like is the right thing for me to do, regardless of what is the swirl around me.
I like the distinction, Jim, that you drew between distractions and actual issues. Like I think that's important because it's not about avoiding. It's not about ignoring what's happening, because that is one of the reactions many of us are having, sort of like bury our head in the sand, forget about it, talk about anything else than the issues that are happening right now.
A different kind of bypassing.
Right? So it's a different sort of bypassing. And so we're not talking about avoiding the issues that are present, like the pandemic, racism, the economy, politics. Those are all very important issues to be addressed. But I like what you said about the person that you bring into that particular issue can actually be more destructive than helpful. So I think it's a really important point to explore and talk a bit more about.
Yeah, and I think for me what's needed for me in this season is to really show up as my authentic self so that I can then hear other people and allow the shift that's needed within me to show up. And the starting point of that, well, who am I really? What are my thoughts really? What have I believed in the past that may have contributed to where we are right now socially? And how can I really listen to someone else in order to change the way that I show up? And it starts with, how am I showing up? The good, the bad, and the in-between. And I have found moments during this pandemic where I've done exactly what you've talked about, which is distract.
Yeah.
And I'm getting clear on the need to really to do the work. I think what's getting me there is, kind of anecdotal. My back has been killing me in the past couple of weeks. And so I used to go to the chiropractor once a month. I have been there weekly. And she said to me this week, like, yeah, I keep throwing it out. She's like, wow, your back is really, every time you come in, it's in a bad spot. You're not handling this pandemic very well. And I'm like, what are you talking about? The kids have a structure. The laundry's all done. The house looks pretty good. We're outside every day. How can I not be handling this well? And she's not wrong, because you guys have taught me over and over, the body does not lie. And so I really have a renewed sense of, I can let the laundry sit there and I can let the kids have pancakes for dinner so that I could go and do the work I need to do for me so that I am showing up in the best way that I can.
I actually love that example because it's a very physical, very tangible example of what so many people do in a million different ways, which is like the urgent and important usurps the important.
Yes.
And yeah, your body can't lie to you. Your body eventually will start to shut down if it's not if you're not doing what you need to do in order to feel good.
Yeah.
And our collective body, if it loses a sense of what it actually needs to do and it gets pulled into these distractions, it is going to end up with all of the aches and pains that come with ignoring the thing that is supposed to be done in a particular way, and instead just becomes, the urgency, and I have to do it this way, and the pressure and the social pressure to do it a certain way, and getting sucked into that void. But that's not integrity.
Right.
Integrity is not just the value of the mission. It's the person you take into the mission.
There's an importance that's oftentimes placed on the cause, the issue that's happening. Yeah. And so it's so important it has to be addressed. This is, what are you doing about it? What are you doing about the issue of race? What are you doing about the issue of politics? And so there's a pressure that's put onto us to have to respond. And then on the other side, there's, I think, people who I was talking to an Enneagram teacher who mentors many, 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 many people. And I asked her, do you find that people are using causes right now to avoid their own personal work? And she,
no, of course not.
With a big, huge sigh, said, yes. This is what I deal with a lot. And so there's this unprocessed, undealt with anger or grief or anxiety that's being communicated through the cause. And so people are going out hitting these causes. And sometimes this sort of internal boogeyman we're trying to run from, or this villain we're trying to destroy, a defeat, is put onto this, projected out onto the enemy of the cause. And so we're dividing even more deeply because of that. And I think that at our best, when we're doing the transformational work, we're not looking at this as this is something to win at, to beat others, or to beat the enemy, destroy the enemy. But it's, can there be some sort of peace that results from this? And I've said it before that you can't create peace unless you already have peace within yourself. It's not something that can be put out there through different ways, different means. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, you can't give what you don't have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something we also say all the time, which is it can't happen through you until it happens in you. You can't solve an issue that you haven't solved internally. And this is something I see particularly in the area of race, particularly with a lot of people of Caucasian descent. They're trying to attack the issue when they haven't, as a proxy for actually dealing with it within their themselves and their own story. And we all do this in a million different ways because, frankly, it's hard. It's uncomfortable. We don't want to. It's much easier to take up what we believe to be the right agenda than to take up our own hard work. It's so easy to cling to. I mean, this is a lot of, in America specifically, with some of its spiritual heritage, that has a deep sense that it's about having the right belief. And if you just believe in the right things, you have the right causes that you've attached to, you're on the right side of this issue, that's enough. It's not enough. It's not enough that you're right. It's not enough that you're right if you're an asshole.
Right.
Because then you're just going to create more of what is internally you. You're not going to solve the external thing. You will recreate what is in you. Yeah. That's the side of the thing where you said you cannot create peace unless there's peace within you. That is absolutely true. Because whatever you take into the issue you care about, you will not reproduce the solution you want. You will actually reproduce what is in you. So some of what we're talking about here is this idea of spiritual bypassing. And if you've never heard of it, I'm going to read the actual definition here, which spiritual bypassing is a tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices. And I'll add in, they can be political ideas and practices. They can be any kind of external ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks.
I could say so much about this. I mean, both in me and in the world that we inhabit.
Yeah, I feel like I so want to talk about what is out there that I see.
Totally.
But I have to turn this in on myself, or I'm going to do the opposite of what I just said.
So if you've noticed, my hack is to always include me, because otherwise I won't.
Yeah.
It's purposeful. Yeah. I have to, otherwise I'll just totally look out and be like, so the world I grew up in, and just kind of riff off of that for the next hour.
Yeah, it would be really great if all of this was totally fine line within me, and I could just talk about everyone else who's doing it wrong.
Absolutely.
But that's totally, but I can't. I have to look at where do I sidestep or avoid facing my own unresolved emotional issues, and being my type, I try to be distant from my emotions, and I try to undervalue them because they seem like they're just going to get in the way of what I want to accomplish. Where do I avoid facing my own psychological wounds or underfinished developmental tasks?
So, but see, I like spiritually bypassing by looking at other people's spiritual bypassing.
So great.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And the thing is, it's easier to get an audience on it.
It totally is.
I'm enjoying this. Keep going. You've got an audience right here.
That's right. You never have to address it. The three of us would never have to address anything.
Yeah, it's so easy. Just look at, it's the best way to build a brand, really. You just say, we have it all together. And so that's why we can bring you.
Except for that team meeting that one time.
No, we've forgotten already about that.
Exactly.
That's all right.
Yeah, last week we were like, we didn't handle this well, but we still came back around to it. We didn't avoid it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was the difference.
Do you want to talk about it?
No.
We certainly can. I wasn't thinking that this was where that was
Put
going.
you on the spot totally.
It was my fault. I brought it up.
I know you did. So now you can take it away.
Are we doing this?
Sure. I don't even remember what happened. So
Well, I think
It's
it's
so
a great
under-
example of the possibility of how easy it was to bypass in that moment, both for me and I can watch it happen. I was watching it happen in me. So yeah, let's dive in and maybe. Do you remember it? Because I kind of remember.
Yes. So I remember. What's fascinating for me is this idea of getting triggered and letting the trigger happen, but not letting it take over. And it took over for me. It was my two was absolutely the same word, triggered. And I didn't have the tools or the language or the know-how to let the trigger happen, but not let it happen within me, but not let it come out of me, if that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. Are we?
But I think there's such a thing that we talk about with other people in coaching all the time. And I think that's what we're talking about in this moment. We don't have to do the specifics of it, but just that there's a misunderstanding. You're trying to figure out how to communicate it. And this is where I would reinforce, if you're not going to spiritually bypass, that means you're practicing over performing. You're practicing first. And the practice of it is messy. I was literally talking to a client about this yesterday. It's like her and her husband, they've got 19 years of these patterns, and they're trying to establish new patterns. And both of them were like, well, I tried this and it didn't work. And the other person's like, I tried this and this part kind of worked, but not this part. I was like, you're doing it. You're doing exactly what you need to do. You're experimenting with different approaches. You're not just bypassing it. You're not giving up, and you're not forcing the other person to say you need to buy into this solution. You're navigating this space. Yeah. And I think, as we, work together, when you work closely with people on important things like this, it's going to come up. Like things are going to come up. It's guaranteed. And every chance it's a chance to practice, like not sidestepping it, but like actually leaning in and going, okay, we had a misunderstanding, or this kind of thing triggered me, or something's wrong and I can't even name it.
Yeah.
Well, that's the part of it that's, as some have talked about, is confession. Like it's the practice of confession. This is not like a religious thing. This is like very much a mystical, spiritual practice of the confession itself is very powerful because it releases the darkness within. Like you stop sort of spinning, you stop the effect that it's having in you. And at very least, now the others who are around you, particularly those who work closely with you, because when you work closely with somebody, you pick up on energy shifts all the time, even if you don't know what that is. And even if, like me, you're going to just sort of push through it, ignore it, and kind of push through it, you're still picking up on data,
it's a solid
and everybody
solution.
does.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's worked actually.
How much do you think we have ignored before she
totally like a ton of, and it's worked.
It's so good. It's so good.
And then she comes along.
She comes along and has to go, I'm not feeling, things are feeling different in this room right now.
Really, we like how it's feeling.
Yeah.
Like, shit, Suzanne just came in with that.
But it's so good. I love that too.
See, I'm not getting triggered. I love this.
And I'm actually comfortable in that space.
Well, yeah, you are, but I'm not. So like,
okay, let's do this.
but I'm willing to go there because it's it's like, okay, fine, we're doing this work, we got to do it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, folks. We are peaking the microphones because we're laughing loud when we do that.
So I think we should talk about this.
Okay, all right, let's do it.
So let me talk about
Suzanne's most uncomfortable.
Let's do this.
But this has to do with another piece
So
which
it's
we
Suzanne's
talk
fault
about.
because she asked the question. So she's
Yes.
So this was like, what was it, last week?
Yeah.
Wow, it feels like forever ago.
Doesn't it?
We've come so far since then. Like everything's so much better.
Everything has changed.
Did we
I'm glad to be able to
bypass
talk
it?
about this
totally
in the
fine
past.
now. Yeah, it's like
We might have bypassed it.
This is so long ago, and since then we've completely changed.
this is great.
Continue.
But this is also comes to the point where I've talked to people about like it's really great if you can look at the transformational stuff and you can laugh through some of it because it can be really horrifying, but it also is kind of like, oh look, that's funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is right before a coaching call, literally right before a group coaching call, and we're on there 5-10 minutes before it actually starts
With a group.
with
Yeah,
a group. Group coaching. And
webinar. It was before the webinar.
okay, it was.
That's right.
Oh man, yeah. There's a lot more
For
people
anybody
there
who's
too.
on that webinar, you're going to get an inside look.
Well, and you're already like heightened, right? Because just right before it, at least for me, I sort of have to get my thoughts together, get myself prepared mentally, emotionally, to engage. And I knew that I was able to do it as I can move past stuff. I can like, okay, well, I get this issue going on in my life, but we all do, right? We all bring all these issues into every meeting that we have, but we try our best not to let it impact it. So I was trying my best not to let I felt very sensitive to a lot of things. So I was overly triggered by every little thing that ordinarily doesn't trigger me.
And you say you'd been feeling that way for a couple of days?
Yeah, it was a few days before then. And so at home, my wife would say something, and I just feel like snapping, having a little snarky remark, and I could feel that constantly in me. And I realized part of it was just simply I hadn't been sleeping well for the last few days. That has its effect, right? So,
Totally.
But I'm feeling very sensitive. And you asked me, this is literally 5 or 10 minutes before the webinar is about to start. Typical heart type, looking through into the soul.
Remind me
How
what to do.
are you? And
Okay,
all
that's
I said
not
was,
how I said it. I said, hey, how are you?
That's true. You did say it that way.
It's very light.
It was.
very light.
It was sort of like,
All that
hey, how are you?
heaviness. Yeah,
So
all that
maybe it was
heaviness
the way I heard it. How are you? Shit, she sees something. I'm trying to hide. So yeah, I said, well, I'm doing okay, or something like that.
All right. I think
But it
I
wasn't
said,
my normal like.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
It was not your normal. That's basically
And you
yeah.
picked up on it not being the normal, and then you asked, and I said, I've just been triggered lately by a lot of things. I can't remember if you said it by us, by like,
Art of Growth. Yeah.
By the Art of Growth
the work
team?
we're doing. Yeah.
and I said yes,
Yeah.
and then I said, but by a lot of other things too, home life, everything's triggering me. It's like it's not the particular issues.
Yeah.
It's just and I still didn't know what it was. I just knew that I was hypersensitive to a lot of things. Then what happened after that?
I think I said, oh, well, if you want to talk about it, happy to talk about it. And that's where you were saying, no, I'm going to deal with this on my own.
You're like, let's go for a walk or something. Or
Right,
let's
right.
do a walk
Because we
later.
had done a walk
Yeah.
together,
Yeah, the week before, yeah.
to get out of the indoors. And that was where you're like, nope, this is my work to do. I don't want you and Jim to take any responsibility for it. And boom, I was like, this is mine to own. and
I must
I
have
got
done something, yeah.
exactly. And that's where my trigger happened, where I immediately replayed the tape of all of our recent team meetings and podcasts. And I was like, what did I say that triggered Joel? What did I do? And having no idea and going to a place of not having these tools and a way to reason through a trigger moment. And we were 5 minutes to turning on the cameras for a webinar, and Jim hops on. He's like, hey, you ready? I'm like, no. And I needed a minute. And that was
Yeah,
kind
and
of
you like, I saw the emotion come up and I was like, what did I do? Like that still went off of me. I was like, oh no. Because you were like, because you said something about like I was better 5 minutes ago. And I was like,
what happened 5 minutes ago?
And then I laughed because I was like, oh, you were
The
feeling
nerves,
really ready and confident. And then something nerves came up and I was like, oh, that's funny. Like the nerves came up. And then it was like, I saw the emotion. I'm like, oh no, what did I do? So I'm like, we're about to go on and talk in front of all of these people live.
Yep.
With all of us, and I'm just going like, so if any of you were on that, I don't know if you picked up on anything, probably a few out there, but I mean, you still came back and it was completely like composed and professional, and like the content what that was about like came through clear, and it was great. It was awesome.
Well, and I think that's maybe what has helped me is I'm able to go through trigger moments faster than I used to. Something like that a couple years ago, I would have been down for the rest of the day. Really? You know, and in a corporate setting, that doesn't work. I would have I would have said, for fear of upsetting somebody I cared about or triggering somebody, I would have just stopped talking.
Oh, wow.
And so obviously through this work, it's not about not getting triggered. It is about deciding what you do when you get triggered and having the tools to deal with it. And so in the heat of that moment, I didn't have a great tool set.
So how do we, like, let's talk about how we actually got through it and recovered, because and value the people that are on your team or in your circle who are comfortable with bringing this stuff up and asking about it. Because, like, for us, that's me, and I'm totally comfortable with it because I'm not afraid of it. I always think that there's good things and better things on the other side of anything that goes wrong. I'm just like, oh, this is kind of cool. So what was going on? What had happened?
Well, I think you had said at the end of the webinar, like, hey, we don't have to talk about it, but if there's anything that you would like to share.
Yeah, I didn't force it on you, which is what I used to do, because I used to like force people's transformational moments on them instead of like allow them and make space for them, which is what I'm trying to learn. But had you not done that, like, and if Joel and I had been the only ones there, and he was just like, no, this is kind of for mine to deal with, I would have been like, great.
Right. Well, and I have to wonder, would that have been would that have been a better way? I do think that.
No.
Well, what did that do for you, though, to have me kind of not be okay with your I'm okay answer?
Well, at first it was like when you did pull away and you said, I need a minute, I thought I did something wrong.
Oh, yeah.
I immediately felt like I'm guilty again of doing something. And then I thought, was it because I rejected your desire to help? And then I felt terrible about that. Like, I didn't want that to be the effect of it. So initially it was like, oh, I want to pull out. Like, I want to pull out of this moment. And then, but I also want to fix it. So when we came back and Jim asked that question, which I think is, again, this is the whole social transformational piece that's so critical in transformation work, because I don't think it can happen at best when it's done solo. I really do believe this more and more. It's just my experience of it personally, my observing it with my clients. The social component is so important. Yeah. If Jim hadn't asked that question at the end, I probably would have still said, hey, are you okay? Let's talk about it. But you tend to create the space for stuff to be dealt with rather than to be swept under the rug.
Yeah.
I would delay it. I don't like it being there, but I'll delay it.
Oh, I'll delay it if it has to do with me. But
really? Yeah.
Like, this is the thing that some of you will see on the newsletter, which is like talk about like, no, I prefer to present a finished product, not to let you see me in the process. But this was us doing the process live.
Yeah.
And I will probably need that called out when it is,
when you're the one.
When I'm the one.
I will watch for that.
Yeah, you do that.
And I will just enjoy it. I will enjoy it. I will.
Joel will be like, I'm totally fine.
I'm great. When it's not me, when I'm able
so
to.
how did we get through?
Well, so you created the space, and then Suzanne, you responded with truth. So, well, here's what's going on. This is how it made me feel. I felt responsible. And then my response was, even though I could have, to your question, would it have been better if you had worked on it alone? there's a part of it that I did need to work on for sure. Like I felt like this is not something that I can bypass because I have all kinds of mechanisms of bypassing that I've come to terms with. One of them is I can talk incessantly about something as a way to bypass it. That is one of the methods I've used in the past. Overtalk or not talk about it at all.
Rationalize it.
Linearize it. Sure, analyze it. That's
Yeah.
a form in one article I read. They call that psychological bypassing.
Yes.
Where you can stare at it, you can analyze it, you can ascend to the head and look at it from every angle and forever be curious and interested, but never actually embodying anything to make any real transformational changes in your life. And so I could see that happening. And so I didn't want to do that. I wanted to embody this. I wanted to own it. I wanted to walk it out. The part I was blind to, which I'm super grateful that you pushed in this way, was the social dynamic. I don't like to do real-time transformational work with other people. I don't like it. Frankly, I have like a visceral reaction. I feel it like internally right now. Like I hate that. There's like this visceral reaction of,
oh yeah,
don't make me do that. There's it is the worst thing to be exposed that way. And I'm not, I'm not a body type or I'm a head type. So, but I still have that visceral reaction. Like I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to be seen as having any sort of weakness in this present moment. And you asked about that question, but is it important to do it in the social and in the social context? And what I realized was in my confession of it, in my admitting I'm dealing with some triggers right now. It's not yours to deal with. It's mine to deal with, but I just need to say that. And for you guys to come along in that support of saying, essentially without saying it, we're doing this together, like I'm not carrying your crap, but I'm with you. That has some real incredible effects on I think the psyche. It first of all is like I felt a relief in some sense. Like I wasn't carrying it any longer alone, but I want to carry it alone. I don't want anybody else to be with me in that space. And yet the fact that I carried it with you and you guys were in that created a measure of relief from it. And then the confession of it seems to also help in, moving on from it. It seems like that's part of the process. So, yeah.
Part of my work, which was highlighted by your comment to me, which was, do you recognize, meaning Suzanne, do you recognize that you don't own Joel's triggers? And that is work that I have been doing and obviously will continue because I don't know that I always see that. I see that even in my own family. Like if there's something I can do that'll prevent somebody from getting upset, then yeah, I would love to do that. And I can't take on everybody's triggers, So if I could do something different to prevent a negative outcome for someone else, that to me feels like helping as well.
Yeah.
But I can't do that if I don't know what is going on with someone else. But again, there's boundaries and yeah.
Yeah. I think boundaries is the key word there because I think everyone has sort of different ways that they have to figure out their boundaries. But I think for a lot of heart types is like, how can I be supportive and not own?
Yes.
Like not own it as that's mine. I have to carry that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me quickly take that off your back.
Yes.
Instead of like, okay, how do I walk with you as you figure out how to carry this?
Yeah. And that's the over-helping nature of at least a 2. That helping more than you're asking me of me.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I can do it too. I'm not, but I can still lean into that space. And I think a lot of people have that either from a cultural overlay or from type or center. Like however we get there, a lot of us have a difficulty distinguishing between what is mine to own and what is mine to be present to and supportive of, but not with the same level of ownership.
Yeah.
And to recognize that whatever's being triggered in you, that's your work.
Yes.
Like if you recognize that, and you recognized, this is about me wanting to be responsible for something and and recognizing that part of it I'm not responsible for. And I think that that's the good work of whatever is happening in the world around us is, whether it's the pandemic, racism, the economy, politics, or something much closer to home, issues at home. These are all teachers for us. They're all there to point back to what's your transformational work as you engage in those issues. It's not the avoidance of them. It's you're being prepared to actually engage the issue in a better way, in a higher way. So I think that's the point of them. And I tend to avoid them, and yet they're teachers. Like right before the webinar, that's a teacher. Right after the webinar, that's now that we're dealing with, it continues to be the teacher. In what way can it help you to transform?
Yeah, and I don't think any of us really have the authority, circling back, to speak into any issue out there until we deal with some of this stuff in here. I mean, it's going to take a bunch of different forms, but you cannot solve the world's problems by solving the world's problems outside of yourself. If you don't deal with that internal, you're never actually going to get there in a way that is beneficial. People who do often end up burned out or bitter from doing that work. A lot of us have seen examples of that. People who thought, like, I am on the right mission. I'm working on something that really matters. And then their life flames out. It burns out. They have some kind of a blow up where they blow up their family, their finances, something goes horribly wrong. And you go, that mission was important, but it was really serving as a proxy for the work that they needed to do, which has gotten avoided and was able to be avoided by the mission that was so worthy that took over.
Yeah.
And this is what the actual work is coming back to these things of in our day-to-day lives and our moment-to-moment lives and our interactions with each other. Like, are we willing to do this? Because to the extent we are unwilling to do this, we will not have authority to speak into the things that really matter. But the extent we do this, we will.
Yeah, and I love the name Richard Rohr's organization, the Center for Action and Contemplation. I thought he just nailed it. Like the whole issue of action and contemplation is, I think, the work. It's not one or the other. It's not over contemplation, because then you don't get the feedback of the work itself. The work itself is a teacher. But then as it teaches you, you have to go back to contemplation and do a bit more inner work and transformation. And then you go back out and you do work. And it's this constant feedback loop of ever growing if we continue to do both, I think. So
You've used the phrase lately that whole people have a holistic impact. And that sticks with me because it takes a lot of work to have all three of our centers online at the same time, much in the same way that the three of us representing each of the centers, it's more work for the three of us to work together than any combination of the two of us.
Sure.
And I really like that we can experience what that means to bring three centers online through the work that we're doing so that we can have a holistic impact.
So thanks again for listening and for joining us, and a special thanks to all of you who have taken a step closer to the community by being a part of webinars, of group coaching, of individual coaching, so that we can be a part of your story. It is such an honor for us to be a part of your journey, part of your growth, and a part of your story. If you haven't yet taken that closer step to the community and you'd like to, you can at least go to theartofgrowth.org and either take our online test that's free or sign up for our newsletter where some content will go out that'll be beneficial to you. You can also follow us on Instagram or on Facebook at Enneagram Panels. So that is going to do it for us this week. So now may you, my friends, go out into the work. May you go inside to the work that is going to change the person who goes out and does everything else you are made to do. May you free yourself from the distractions and the pull of the noise of social media and everything else that would pull you into someone else's agenda. And may you be clear on what you are here to do. May you move passionately and boldly towards the work that is yours. And may you feel a sense of being lifted by doing that. And may your heart expand in wonder as you go and do. Grace and peace.